Hi, everyone. Welcome to the QualiWare Users Group meeting for April, and thank you very much for taking the time to join us. Our agenda for today, introductions, Cecile Hurley, that's me, CloseReach news, Kevin O'Rourke, if Kevin gets his audio sorted out. If not, I will provide it. Our featured presentation today is on the OpenAPI, and Kuno is joining us from QualiWare to provide that. We have a QualiWare tooltips section about the spreadsheet tool, and Dragos is going to show some of that. And we also have time at the end for our community discussion. In terms of CloseReach news, I would invite, as we normally provide a QualiWare update, but as Kuno is on with us today, I asked him if he would mind sharing the QualiWare update with us. So Kuno, if you'd like to do that, that would be great.
Thank you for inviting me, and I'm glad to be back. I can see from the list here that I've seen a lot of you already, so I'm not going to go into a big introduction of myself here, just talking a little bit about QualiWare, and obviously there is a couple of topics that would be typical to mention when we talk about a company. Are we doing well? Yes, we're doing well, thank you. I had a meeting with you guys last year where I talked about the fact that we sold off a part of the company, a consulting company that we owned in Norway last year about this time, and it sort of made us quite stable from a financial point of view, and it has enabled us to invest in new organization and new markets. Hence, both Alexander, who is our sort of future star on the enterprise architecture scene, and Frederick Rasmussen, who is our new partner manager, he's gonna conquer the world for us, and that's quite great. That's good. Last year's result has come in. It was fine, given the fact that it was Corona. Pretty much the same as the year before, so we are happy with that. But this year has started off quite well. We already have 4 new logos coming in the countries where we're represented, and we've had sort of for a long period of time in the first quarter. So that's quite good. We have expanded our organization, hired new people in the UK, in Denmark, and Brazil. And of course, as you may guess, we've been very focused on the situation in Ukraine. As you may know, we have a development team of 5 people down there, and it's been a little too exciting, if you wish, to see what the result would be from a team in Kiev. So fortunately, we did not have anyone sitting on the east side of Ukraine, all in Kiev. However, we all know that they've been under major attack for a while. Already before the war began, we offered to take them out of Kiev and out of Ukraine, and offered them, you know, an opportunity to stay in Denmark with their family, and they all answered that they, you know, were happy with the suggestion, but they wanted to stay there and fight for their country. And when that actually broke out, we offered their families some refugee and or staying homes in Denmark, but again, they wanted to stay together as a team and as families, and we have to respect that. We've not been under attack in Denmark for many years, so to predict how we would react ourselves in such a situation is not easy. So we basically said let's just leave it to the Ukrainians to decide whether they want to flee or bring their families into safety. Fortunately, they have been able to work actually pretty much all the way through the crisis, and they're back in Ukraine now, where the attacks on Ukraine has sort of gone down a bit, and we're happy to say that that the Ukrainian team is, you know, up and running, and they're producing software and doing support as we would expect them to. So that's very very comforting, actually. And with a new partner strategy, we can see that there's quite an interest. We've also engaged a little bit more with the Gartner. So anyway, I think pretty good news from QualiWare all in all, and I think that, you know, we're happy to get out of Corona. I know that we cannot say that for all countries, of course, but certainly in Scandinavia, the sanctions has been lifted, which is, you know, you may still get sick, but it's a great relief to be able to just do what you're supposed to do rather than go around and be afraid of getting infected. So I don't know how the status is actually in Canada right now, but you can look forward to sanction lifting, I think, because it's really a great experience coming back to normal life. If there's any questions, I don't know, Cecile, if it's appropriate to open up for that already, because we'll, you know, talk more later. But certainly, you know, I'll take questions if you have any.
We should probably keep them to later, I'm thinking.
Fine.
Just sort of half saying that. Did you want to speak anything about the release, the version, the release time?
So the release of QualiWare 10.6 was supposed to be out actually now, and I wouldn't say as always, but certainly once again, I would say our ability to plan for exact releases has not improved in the same pace as the improvement of the company in general. In other words, when we look at what we are planning to release, then we think of new stuff that we want to include before the release, and we've done so again. So we'll look at a release probably a month from now. So today I'm going to talk about something that we actually started developing a long time ago, and we were supposed to refine that with a customer in Denmark, the Danish tax. Something came up with that project, so it didn't happen. So now we've finished that off on our own. So that whole OpenAPI is something I want to talk about. But of course, I'll go through a little bit of, you know, what are the news going to be in 10.6, so you can see that something is actually happening there. So a little bit late on the release, unfortunately. However, there was a new release 10.5 just before New Year, with a new server architecture, a different way of handling the internal communication. We moved away from .NET remoting onto a service-based architecture, and it seems that has actually improved the server part quite well, and we are implementing the same structure on the client part right now. So yeah, okay. I'm looking forward to showing you stuff here a little later.
Great, thank you, Kuno. I appreciate that.
Cecile?
Yes.
There you go. I'm connected again.
Okay.
So I can talk about our contract update.
Sure.
Just wanted to let everyone know, people who may not have been on the last meeting, they should have, all the departments and agencies should have received a questionnaire already asking questions about the current EA solution contract and about the future. If you haven't received that questionnaire in your department, then Bruno Willette and Michael Dean are kind of behind that. So Bruno from CBSA and Michael Dean from PSBC. So if you haven't received that questionnaire, been able to give them any kind of feedback on the current and for the future, please reach out to them. Michael Dean should have been in touch as well with each department for the annual renewal, maintenance support renewal, which is happening the end of May. So everyone should have their quote whatever you need to do internally in your own departments, you need to be doing that so that the amendments can be made in a timely fashion at the end of May. So that's that's well in hand. And again, if if there are any issues around that, please reach out to Cecile, and she will help resolve. And if there's any new licenses you'd like to buy, we can definitely help you with that as well. I mentioned last time around our ISO 9001. We actually had our registration audit 2 weeks ago. And if you've followed me on LinkedIn at all, you'll have noticed that we were granted that registration. So we used QualiWare and the compliance management accelerator that we've built to help us get there. And the auditor had quite a few comments on how well connected everything was in terms of process, governance, document management, and all of that. So that compliance management accelerator is available to people in the government, and we are working on enhancing that. And I've actually had the first inquiry beyond 9001. Actually was talking to an organization today about 27001, so the IT security standards. So we will be working to make sure that we cover all of those other standards, other additional ISO standards within our accelerator. In terms of customer updates, I mentioned the compliance management accelerator. Our internal team has done a good job developing that. There's a new version of CBP, the compliance, or the rather collaborative business planning software that's been released, and we're currently has been currently deployed to the customers that are using that in the cloud. So anyone else, if you have any other customer updates, if you want to raise your hand and announce something that's gone on in your particular department, now's the time. I think I mentioned last time, PSPC, we had their cloud environment up and running. Sorry, Cecile?
Nope, that wasn't me. That was, I think, somebody else.
Oh, yeah, it's Carol.
Carol, there we go.
How are you, Kevin?
Hi.
Just a quick question on your cloud solution. In terms of protected B, like you're saying, PSPC is on the cloud. We also have VDM, our team here at ESDC, but it's not a protected B, right? Can you give us any information on that?
Actually, I have a meeting on, Carol, when is it? Thursday? With RCMP, and they're going to be implementing a protected B environment.
Okay.
Yes, it's Thursday.
There is an accreditation, federal government, it's called CCCS security assessment that they do with the cloud vendor, and they certify the solution as protected B. So I don't know, you're meeting with RCMP, but there's a couple bodies. There's CSC, Communication Security Establishment. The CCCS, I can't remember what it stands for, but those are the official bodies that would actually do an assessment on the product itself for the cloud. So I'm not sure if you have any traction with those groups at all to make the tool available in a protected B cloud environment.
So we do have a private sector partner who has provided protected B cloud environments before.
Okay.
We have not deployed QualiWare in that envelope with them as yet, but both QualiWare, CloseReach, and the local consulting company who provides that environment, we have had some internal discussions about that. I expect that on Thursday we'll find out a lot more, with our RCMP meeting. And hopefully I'll have some other things to report at our next user group meeting about that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Any other announcements from anybody else?
I don't see anybody else with hands. No other
Okay.
hands. Okay.
A couple of training things just to make note of. We have a webinar happening in May with Roger Brodersen, and we have 60 people registered already for it. And you can do that. There's no cost for this webinar. You go to the CloseReach homepage, and you should be able to, I think Cecile's taking us there right now. And you should be able to hit the link there and register for the session. And we actually have Roger coming. So Roger's going to run in the Ottawa race day in September. And so we've convinced him, and he's willing to run an in-person course here in Ottawa. So we're looking to set up another business architecture course here in Ottawa with Roger in person. So that's currently on our website as well, on our training. So if you have people who are interested in that, interested in registering, then they can go there and register as well. So, and that's one other item actually. Just let people know we're putting together two new governance workflow engine guides. One is an end user guide, and the other is a more technical and best practices guide. And we're just did a review of that today. We're making some final changes. So in the next couple of weeks, those governance workflow engine guides should be available to everyone. And we'll make sure that we post that information and let the different governments know through primary, or government departments know through primary, secondary, and technical contacts. Great.
Great.
That's all I have, Cecile.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate
Thank you.
that. All right, next up is our guest of honor.
Let me start with some PowerPoint, and even if Cecile said, wait for the questions till later. If there's anything you want to sort of shout out and you simply you can't wait, then just do that, because I'm used to that.
Yeah, open the floodgates, Kuno.
Anyway, QualiWare 10.6. Some of these we talked about already last year as part of 10.5, and as I just said, we decided to split the 10.5 into a server architecture release that was released just before New Year, and there's been a couple of patches on top of that, included SCIM login mechanism, so that in cloud you can run your own Azure AD and push your organization into the cloud environment, so that if you remove, or if somebody leaves your company and you remove that from your own AD, their access to the cloud will immediately be terminated in QualiWare as well. So, but now 10.6 has some new features that are quite sort of vital, but also relatively innovative, I think. First of all, when it says the new dashboard feature, it has to do with a new user interface when you're looking at a diagram. So we basically got a little tired of, and we also, to be frank, got a little criticism from Gartner on the traditional tab-oriented structure in the web when you're looking at a diagram. So when you look at a diagram, you have these 10, 15 tabs on top of it where you can run different types of analysis. And that was a little not flexible enough, basically. So we are introducing a whole new user interface on that part, and we've tried that and tested it with selected consultants, and they really like that. Another feature that we are building more into is the 3D visualization. First of all, we are expanding our flexibility on the current 3D visualization. So instead of getting that whole solar system that you're familiar with everything in there, you can now filter the relationship. So you can say, I want to visualize, but I want to visualize with respect to responsibility or digitalization or compliance. So you can have different types of focus on the visualization and not include all objects, but just the objects that relates to that specific domain. So that is quite a powerful extra feature in the 3D visualization. Another thing that we built is the ability to visualize connected diagrams. So instead of visualizing 3D objects with relationships, we're basically visualizing floating diagrams in the air. So you can say, oh, here's my main diagram, and then I can visualize everything that this breaks down to or that it's connected to in either end and things like that. So a little bit more domain-specific visualization of a set of objects, like 10, 15 diagrams that are connected, and you want to see that all in one visualization. And that is something that we're waiting to show you guys. It's actually got quite a good review from our reviewers, and it also allows you to show that subset of the business architecture that you wish to focus on. You can of course not change it, but it allows you to bring that out into the open. And also it allows you to save that and basically print that as a PNG file or something, and move it into another diagram if you want to. The last thing on visualization is the ability to do clustering analysis. And the clustering analysis is a mathematical algorithmic approach to organizing and grouping objects that belong together. And how do we know how they belong? Well, there is a mathematical distance or affinity measurement where the closer they are put together, these objects, the bigger the chances that they belong to the same cluster. And then you can say, so what do you mean putting objects close together? Is it sort of the geography of it? No, it's not. This is a definition of closeness that can be changed. So right now, number of relationships are sort of out of the box distance measure. So the more relationships there are between objects, the higher the chances that they belong to the same cluster. So you could say, in theory, if you cluster your entire repository, you should end up having a sales cluster, a procurement cluster, an HR cluster, a manufacturing cluster, and so on and so forth. So you would hope that they would cluster together in something that makes sense from a business knowledge point of view. Now, if you're missing the HR cluster, then it may be because you didn't model that, or you didn't model enough to make it its own cluster. And then you have to drill into a lower level of clusters to find the HR area. Now, it is not the idea that we want to reproduce your organizational diagram with a new smart mathematical analysis. The idea is to take chaos data and make sense of it. So if you have a spreadsheet that you're importing, or if you have used the tags, you can hashtag any object in QualiWare, and then you can have a folder that assembles all the objects that belong to the same tag. Now, if you've done that, there are no sort of predefined relationships necessarily between all those objects in the same folder. But if you cluster that folder, you will get a logical groups of belonging objects to make it easier for you to model your business going into the future. A classical business architecture example of clustering is you want to transform your business. You have 2,000 applications and 855 processes and some information, and then you want to define your transformation projects. And you may want to include the relevant subset of your improvement in the same project. And if you cluster your business model, you will actually, especially if you combine that with your capability model, you will get suggestions for well-formed and sort of scoped transformation projects. And this is something that we are excited to work with in the future. We are looking at more and more underlying features in the tool to help you organize and understand chaotic and large amount of data, and clustering analysis is certainly a way forward on that. Then we are expanding the query design. The query designer has become enormously popular in QualiWare. It basically allows you to draw a model that shows the objects and relationships that you want to follow. Basically, draw a subset of the graph structure of the data, and then generate a query that can be reused in multiple different places, in QRVs, spreadsheets, reports, what have you. That query design was expanded last year with the notion of composite model. So basically a QSQL model at the bottom that extracts a subset of the data from the repository, and then multiple layers on top of that with composite queries that could calculate, aggregate, or basically run a lot of data and statistics analysis on top of your data. Now we want to combine that analysis that sits in the QualiWare toolset with queries that goes out of the QualiWare toolset. And last year we introduced the ability to reverse engineer a database structure into a relational diagram. Now what we're introducing now is the ability to use that relational diagram to generate actual SQL queries with the query designer. So instead of creating the relationships or following the relationships in the hyperlinks and the graphical relationships in QualiWare, it will follow your foreign keys in your relational diagram. And that means that you can basically sit in QualiWare and use the same capability to design queries that extract data from your external databases, so BI systems, data warehouses, wherever you need to have data externalized and internalized and linked to the QualiWare models. So quite an interesting approach, and the more we work with this, we can see that the query design becomes more and more easy for people configuring the toolset in order to extract the exact amount of data and get the right result back. Last thing, the repository explorer, where it says here optimized for large data set. That is actually already implemented in 10.5, so it could be a different thing here. But what I want to say is that if those of you who are familiar with the QualiWare repository explorer, you know that you can browse your objects and relationships in the tree structure. In the web, you only have the folders and the templates. So as soon as you get objects there in the center, list view part of the repository explorer. Now we are expanding that so you can browse objects and relationships in the tree view. I don't know if that's going to be enormously important to you. It's just we want consistency, and people are happy with that. Also, we want to introduce some sort of use by the little tree view you see in QLM at the bottom of the repository explorer that shows if you select an object, where's this object used. That is something we want to include again, both in the repository explorer and even in the ask list. Another thing that has to do with seeing a list of objects is a tree list that we are implementing in the revision management and in the approve and promote feature, so that you are more able to fold out sub hierarchies and highlight what is it that I want to promote. Right now we're using just maybe a little too sort of simple approach to this. If you ask me, we are either using, including everything on the diagram or maybe something else. So, but right now, with this new, you could say ask tree list if you wish. It's not an ask list, but a little bit more advanced. It's easier for people to define exactly what is it that I want to approve. And then there are meta model expansions, and these are not the only ones, but these are the ones I'm, going to touch upon: the cloud architecture model, the web ontology language meta model, and the API architecture. And let's take a look at that. I want to skip this because we've seen that before, but Amazon, Google, and Microsoft has specific models, diagram types or simple types that that their clients can use to model the architecture of the cloud solution that they have, and we'll provide support for those palettes in the 10.6 release. Ontologies are sort of a very high level sort of platform independent layer of a information structure, and it plays a vital role, or can play a vital role in an integration situation where you have APIs linked to your application landscapes and your applications. Of course, those APIs represent a platform dependent structure of information and services. So if you have an API for a system, it represents the way information is structured in that system, and the same for another system. And that is actually what often makes it complicated to integrate two systems, different types of representations of data and different meanings. The ontology language here is a platform independent layer, and as such, there are actually quite a number of industry-specific ontologies with a specific domain. So here we have a time ontology, and just imagine how many of your systems that actually integrate data and time across different platform specific implementations. Now, if all of them implemented a time independent layer so that everybody knew that this is how we represent time, no matter where we integrate from, that would make it possible to integrate easier a number of systems. So that is a type of model that is, I think, here to stay. It's not a new thing, it's just a new thing in QualiWare, but it becomes more and more important as we talk about the API integration, and that of course brings us to that API architecture. And the API architecture we placed under the application landscape, and I'm going to show it in just a moment to take you through that full implementation. So for example, if you have an information flow between two applications, how are they communicating? Well, we can have integration views between those two. We can make that data mapping. That's something we can do already today. So if customer is represented in the first system as customer ID, customer name, blah, 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 and in the target system as client and client number and client name, then the mapping of data from the source to the target needs to be specified. So we can see here, customer ID becomes client number, and the postal address, zip code, and customer city is concatenated into client address in the target system, and type is not even updated. So that ability to, even at a very low level, specify how do we move data from this system to this system and how do we map it. Now, with the API focus that we're seeing now more and more with our clients, also a specific standard for APIs have emerged. It used to be called Swagger files. Now it's called OpenAPI. So there's a consortium, and I'm using this just to show you the meta model for the OpenAPI file. So it's quite complicated stuff here. We're talking about a file that defines all the data structures, parameters, and services of an API into a system. So this is the meta model for that. And we're going to take a look at how are we going to handle that in just a short while. So no thank you yet, but let me show you something here. I have a new repository here, TV Kitchen. There will be a button for that, of course. Let me import that OpenAPI stuff. Where did I go here? OpenAPI, test repositories. So we'll just import something here. Now we got something in here. And I will, the OpenAPI establishes an object that is called doc_root. Here's the doc_root. Well, let me find the right file to import here. Thought I had that. Sorry about that. No. Where did I put that? I just did this. JSON files. Here are some OpenAPI files. These are defined for an application, real estate core. So it basically reads that JSON file and it imports it, and it will give you that doc_root. That doc_root object here, real estate core. So the doc_root is the root of the JSON documentation for that API. And if I open that up, it has a list of what is known as paths. Basically, you could say areas that would be in this case a real estate API. So there would be the building section that has to do with reading and writing into building information. And if I click get, this is everything I can do on the has building component. There's a string filter. I basically open up the different API parameters and services and return codes that is part of this specific API. So this API represents an interface opportunity into a specific application. Now, if we go to the web, that's somewhere here. Here's my web. Go to application management. Let's take a look at how that is represented now in the web. So we just saw that in QLM. In the web, it looks a little different, also a little nicer. So I have an integration between these two specific applications. It's represented on this specific diagram. And I can open up and look at the interface supporting this specific, and I can see that real estate core module. Now, what we've done is to include a specific user interface on the API. So here you're seeing exactly what you saw before. Here you can see the building here and building component. These are the paths for this specific API, and then we can see all the services: get building entities, create a new building, get a specific building, update an existing building. So basically, stuff that you can find in the API. If I click that, I will see the actual documentation of the API. So has building component, it's a string, and so on and so forth. This is basically how the API is defined. So if you're a developer and you want to request stuff on a building, these are the operations that you can call, and there are some parameters that you would need to update. And over here on the right side, we've included a coding environment where you can get help with the code that you want to send to this specific API. So if you click here, there are coding environments that allows you to, JavaScript, or I want to use, for example, let's do a C# REST API script. Well, here is your code to access that specific operation in that specific interface in that specific path. So we're helping people not just documenting and analyzing their API, but also writing code. If you want to do that with, let's do this as a Python request, you get suggestions, so little code snippets that you can use in order to establish that working API. Now, of course, QualiWare does not run any type of automatic transformation or transfer of data between objects. We're only handling the descriptive part of this, but you can actually get code out of this, and it gets you this particular nice way of looking at the API just by pointing to the JSON file. So that is quite nice. And then of course, you can use all the different type of analysis that you have. Here we could see we came from this mobile passenger platform with this interface, and here are all the different things. And if I want to see where did I use my building interface, that will be available as an analysis. If you have used this in multiple systems, you will get this information right out of your EA tool. And that is exactly what the Danish tax were looking for. I mean, they have these thousands of applications, and they basically don't know what system is using what information. They don't have that documented well. And with this, they can get that documentation up and running quite easily. So that is how we are looking at the API. We've integrated it into the normal version, and basically expect you to just add that as sort of endpoint definitions for your application landscapes. And then the last thing, we talked about those ontologies, and we saw the time ontology before. Here's the friend of a friend ontology, Rami 4. Not very interesting. Real estate core. Here's the real estate core ontology. So if you have the real estate API in one of your systems, then of course you should link that into the core, or consider that real estate core. And these are public domain type of ontologies. So this is something you can go out. You can find it. Your industry organization may have done this already. I know that in Denmark, the government built that sort of data distributor a couple of years ago, and that was actually what they did, was to say, okay, this is how you can get data from the Danish government system. So if you want to have a GIS type of information, routing and any type of geography information, then you can ask the public system this way, and the data distributor would give you that data right back if you ask the right way. So there's a nice set of standard, more than we have here, and there may be ontologies out there that we don't even know of, but it's certainly something that, what is an event, has an observation type, has a point in time, has a start time, has a read time, has created time. A lot of stuff in there that is important to look at when you want to work with integration. And so that's how it is. But it's certainly something that has generated a lot of, at least, internal interest in the way that it's much easier to understand. It's much more personalized. If you want to save your tiles and move them around a bit, so it's easier for you, save them onto your personal object. So next time you log in, you have your own setup for the way that you work with your diagrams. And I think that is something that is a little bit easier to work with. Yeah. So that was all I had to say about API. Now the good thing is that it will, when we release this, all be able to generate API. So if you don't have an API for your system and you're building that, you can generate the OpenAPI file from QLM as well, or from QualiWare as well. Okay, so that was pretty much it. Now, any questions?
We've built it up so much, there better be.
I saw you had a life cycle up there on your last show life cycle, yes, no. That's a new feature that you can say, yes, show me, and you're looking at properties, it would show you which ones are life cycled.
Yeah, there is a life cycle on all assets in the tool.
Yeah.
No, so yeah, so there is a life cycle on all IT assets, so applications, of course, but also on components and infrastructure components. They all have life cycle, and of course, you can say, well, we have these 6 different parts in the life cycle. Let me, if I open up the.
It was more on the left that I was seeing that life cycle. That doesn't.
So you noticed that, right? It's been there for a while actually. So if you go to the life cycle part, so when did we start investigating this system? When did we start implementing it? When did it go into production the first time? Did we freeze it? When did it start phase out, and when was it phase out, and what life cycle is it in right now? And even if there's a waiver, we knew we were supposed to close it down, but we didn't do it anyway. And who granted that waiver, and what's the motivation behind the waiver? So that whole management of systems. But then you're absolutely right. There is this show life cycle, yes, no. So if I switch it on, it will show the life cycle state. Now, we are taking the, it's not in 10.6, but we are taking the generation, this is in 10.6, of course, it's actually in the one you have already now. That little thing out there is out of the box. So it's in your system right now. But what I wanted to say was, we are going to create a layered view on highlighting. Because what we have right now in QLM is we have these button panels, for example. You can switch them on and off in QLM. Do I want to see the risks, or do I want to see this, that, and the other? And then it is part of the diagram. So when you freeze it, approve, then it has those buttons placed in that place forever. Now, we don't think that is very flexible, because different people want to see different ways of highlighting on top of your diagram. Now, you may want to see the life cycle, but if you have all these colored quadrants in your face every time you open it, and you don't know what the colors mean, then it's more white noise than it's actually a model, right? So we want to make sure that when we freeze a diagram, we freeze the model, but we don't freeze the highlighting layers. So you can basically switch on and off highlights in the viewing phase without affecting the actual model. So that's something that we're working on right now. The way we're going to do that is to, instead of building, this is an SVG file that we show that is published out of QLM. What we want to do is take the web modeler and basically visualize it in the web modeler, and then put layers on top of that. So it's a read-only version of it. It will probably look exactly like this. You probably won't even notice this difference, except that you will have some of these highlighting buttons that you saw just briefly on the new user interface there, to switch on and off things that you want to show. Which if you have a transformation project, this transformation project, what systems does it affect? And then it will highlight those, or other types of analysis. So of course that means that we're moving away, as we also talked about last time. We're moving away from QLM. It's going to be replaced with a full web solution, even in the configuration layer. Eventually, you will not have QLM. Just so that you know it, if you have built a lot of stuff in QCL, you may actually want to set off some time to convert that into JavaScript, for example. Even though that we are implementing a JavaScript API that looks a lot like QLM, so we're going to make it easy for you. It's probably going to be a different environment. So when we move all that to the web, we get more information, more features available in the web modeler, and moving away from QLM. We've had, to be honest, we've had some challenges with the two environments. We thought we could release a web modeler as part of the Plus release, so for simple modeling, for those who are not architects, but we ended up getting a lot of support on people who modified stuff on the web in the web modeler and then expect the QLM diagram to look exactly the same way. And that was not our intention from the beginning, and we should have thought of that, of course. So now it's pretty much the same thing, but the web modeler is moving ahead now. So whereas it has been sort of QualiWare lifecycle manager with a more functionality than the web modeler, this may actually change in the near future, and we don't want to run into the same problems again, people working in the web modeler and somebody touching it in QLM and messing up everything. For those of you who are really into the details, you'll know that we already solved that problem for the text editor, for example. There's a lot more features in the text editor on the web, and if you modeled or change your content of a description from the web, then you're not able to, unless you specifically asked to override it, you're not able to do text editing in that field in QLM. And that's the same approach we're going to use for the sort of two different environments. It's a crossover type of decision. Eventually, you'll be working full web.
I have a question.
Just real quick, just to finalize that overlay that you talked about is not going to be in 10.6 yet then, the next release?
Well, let me put it this way. This is SVD. You can build any overlay you want to even in 10.6, but out of the box, we are not going to introduce it in 10.6, no.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I have two questions. Thank you for your info. The first one is, when do you think that we're going to be full web and that QLM will no longer be available?
Well, that's actually two questions, because you know, when are we going to be full web? Now with the accuracy on release plans that you're familiar with from QualiWare, I can say with extreme uncertainty that we hope that we will have something ready by the end of this year or the beginning of next year that does not require QLM. That does not mean, though, that you're not able to run QLM. It's just not required. And frankly, it's gonna make it much easier and cheaper for those of you who are running this in the cloud.
Okay.
Because right now we need specific services set up to run the Windows environment QLM in the cloud, and that's no longer going to be necessary.
Well, there's been some departments, like I'll give you an example at SSC, they've customized all of their templates. So, and I think there are challenges right now to bring these templates into the web or to model those kinds of templates. It's challenging right now. So there's going to be some conversion that will be required. And the other thing is, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I think that it should not be, we're using the same technology as you are right now. I'm doing the meta models in QLM and putting them into the web, so for production. So there should not be any challenges in that. It should be a dual representation of the meta model. There may be some of the label functions written in QCL that, of course, will not execute on the web. So if you have, data or text that you want to appear in the symbols, you need to redo those when you want to use them in the web modeler. But other than that, it should work already now.
All right. Now, the other thing I would like to know, is there a place that we know that we can go to see what are the templates that are currently available on the web? I know that the business diagram is, but are there Is there a place you can maybe give us? I think on your website, perhaps there could be a place where we know which templates.
When we open the, you don't mean this sort of view on all the different templates? Is that what you mean, or?
Well, what I
Because-
mean is some templates you can design in the web and others you're unable to right now because they're not all available. So I would like to have a list of the ones that are available that we can start using in the web.
Yeah, I understand. And I actually thought we had put that in, or I'm pretty sure they were in the release notes. We are actually going to open up for a lot of all the diagrams in 10.6, by the way. So,
Okay.
yeah, so
in 10.5, we're looking at how many about are there? 50 or so?
yeah, I would say at least, you know, if we, no, I don't have that list here, I think. Hang on. Where can I find that? Now, don't change this because you can't. Actually, but here is a list of all those. Let me see where it is. There you go.
All right.
So
are you able
now,
to copy this in the chat so that I can just pick it up from there? Because
this isn't
going to be more
10.6.
confusing.
Yeah, and this isn't the 10.6. I want to test this before I give it to you because
Okay.
this is what is open on my diagram, on my version right now. Yeah, I think Kevin, maybe you know that. Is it not in the release notes from? Yeah, I don't think we changed that actually in 10.5, so it's probably in the 10.4.2 release notes. I think there is a list. I'm pretty sure there is a list on all the open. You can see here, but we, you know, ontology.ovl, that's a new one. Whereas environmental impact diagram, regulation diagrams, stuff like that is not new. So this is just my extra stuff here. But pretty much all of them, I would say. There's still a few that where we have challenges with the not with the web model as such, but there's a lot of functionality we need to move over, especially for data modeling and these sort of heavy type of diagrams that has rules embedded in them. So you draw a foreign one-to-many relationship, it creates your foreign key automatically, and it asks you if you want to create it or reuse some of the fields and so on. So that whole wizard type of thing has not been developed fully yet.
Okay. All right, thank you so much. That answers my question.
Sure. Yeah, any other questions?
Any other questions, folks? Going once, going twice. It's really late in Denmark, so
just you know, if there's anything you need, you know, you have my you have an email address, at least I think you do. Otherwise, it's here now in the recording. Send me a mail, or send Alexander a mail, or send Frederick a mail, or somebody, and we will respond.
thank you, Kuno. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining. I know it's late there now, so we really appreciate it. And if there's any follow-up questions, we will forward them along. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. All right, wonderful. Okay, so that was good. We now have our QualiWare tooltips section, where I'm going to invite Dragos to share his screen. And he's going to talk to us about the spreadsheet tool and look at generic queries, examples on how to manipulate the information using formulas, the HTML template definition tabs, and then importing content and objects from a CSV. So Dragos, if you're there, I'm going to change presenters.
All right. So hi, everybody. Today I'm going to talk about, oh wait, I shouldn't be sharing my screen, hold on.
You are? You were?
Yes. I need to share only one window. There we go.
One window. Yes, now we have one window.
Yes. So, like I said, I'm going to be speaking about spreadsheets in QualiWare and their myriad uses. So, first I'll just have a little brief intro blurb, and then we'll jump right in. So, what's a spreadsheet? So, spreadsheets in QualiWare allow the user to edit and aggregate collections of data across a repository from one window. In fact, making changes to content on the web has never been easier thanks to the dynamic spreadsheet functionality, which enables direct editing of attribute fields for various QualiWare objects. QualiWare 10 merges the functionality of a spreadsheet with the functionalities of property matrices known to QLM users and administrators. This means that you can not only edit collections of objects and their attributes, but you can also enrich the spreadsheet with extra columns and rows, where you can add notes, perform calculations, and analyze information. So here we have a spreadsheet example. In this case, oops, loading up, there we go. So we have a spreadsheet example, in this case for corrective actions and their attributes. As you can see, you have access to vast amounts of data for repository objects. Spreadsheets themselves can be standalone, or they can leverage generic queries, which is what this one's doing. And I'll show you what that looks like in QLM a little later. As you can see, the spreadsheet tool borrows some of the aesthetics from and functionality present in Excel spreadsheets. So we have our contextual tabs with the toolbars and the various functionalities. We have a formula bar where we can insert formulas. More to come on this later. We can export a spreadsheet into Excel or PDF quite easily. From the Home tab, it's just the first button on here, Export. So I'll show you what that looks like. So I can export it as an Excel file. Open that up, and here's, oh, is my screen sharing paused? There you go. So this is what it looks like in Excel. Going back to my window. Oh, it's not automatically switching back to my active
No,
window.
it's not. No, it isn't.
Huh. All right. Well, we have, so in the Home contextual tab toolbar, on the left, we have our standard cut, copy, paste. We have text and cell formatting options. We can freeze cells and panes and filter. Depending on where you're selected, on the far right of the Home tab contextual toolbar, you have 3 extra buttons. So the first one allows you to open the page for the object referenced in the actively selected cell. So if I were to click on this, then it offers me the option of navigating to that page. I won't do that right now because it's going to take me out of the spreadsheet. The second of these allows you to open the edit dialog for the object itself. So I can make edits to the object directly from the properties window. The third option allows you to make governance status changes for the object in the actively selected cell. Now, some of your spreadsheets that are using generic queries may end up displaying objects that have statuses. And you, out of the box, you have the option of changing the governance status from the spreadsheet itself, but for all intents and purposes, to stick to the rules implemented by the governance workflow engine, please use the governance actions button. All right, so notice in the spreadsheet, there is a sort of gray outlined area with a gray line. This represents the dynamic area in the spreadsheet. So any changes that you make here will be bolded and italicized where you make them until you press save on the spreadsheet, at which point your changes will be fully committed to the repository. So for example, I will change the title and responsible individual for an object directly from the spreadsheet so you can see what that looks like. let's find one that's in opening status for me. So I can just simply alter it like so. And the responsible, I unselect myself, and then I go in here and we will assign Cecile as a responsible. And so as you guys can see, the changes that I've made are italicized and bolded, but they won't be fully committed to the repository until I press the save button. So now those respective objects have been updated. So there's different, within the spreadsheet, there's also different types of fields for the dynamic area. There's drop-down menus, as we've seen here for the status, and there's also fields for text, number, and dates. You can edit those by going into the Data Contextual tab and clicking the Data Validation button. And we can see here the options that we have for the drop-down list, as well as considerations for rejecting the input or showing an error when invalid information is entered. So you can also, within the spreadsheet, just like in Excel, you can also filter and sort the rows on columns using the either the filter button present in the Data Contextual tab or the Home button, in the Home Contextual tab, the filter button. So what I would do is the filter only applies to the selection you make. So I would always, as a best practice, just select the whole diagram and include a filter. And now you can, hide blanks and do whatever you like. And of course, removing the filter is just as easy. Just select everything again and click that filter button. Outside the dynamic area, we are free to populate the spreadsheet as we wish, as mentioned earlier. For instance, we can add some notes for each row object. For instance, this one here, I could say, call this column notes and say tested GWE functionality. And now that's in there. I could also, you can also use many of the functions that are available in Excel for analyzing or manipulating the data. For instance, let's say I wanted to find out the number of unique individuals responsible for all of these corrective action objects. So I would just go, select a cell, just like in Excel, type equals, and we will, we're looking at, so equals, what was it?
Dragos, just while you're doing that, actually,
Yep.
James had a quick question. What version is the spreadsheet demo? What version are you? James, did you want to know what version Dragos is using right now?
Currently, I'm on QualiWare 10.5, but all the functionality that I'm describing today is should be available in 10.4 as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So if I wanted to figure out the number of individuals responsible for all of these corrective actions, I would just do equals count blank, or sorry, count unique, and select my cells. And see here we have eight individuals that are responsible for all of these corrective actions. Of course, this is all dummy data and test data, so none of it has any real effect. And if you can't find the functions that you're interested in from the available list here, because a lot of these seem to be oriented for statistical analysis, you can easily find the full list of functions by looking up the QualiWare spreadsheet technical guide on the web. And in fact, I will just include a link to it in the chat here for your convenience. In terms of the formulas themselves, it tells you what the formulas do, but it doesn't tell you what the format for those should be. Although in my experience, I've gone up and looked up what the equivalent function is, the same name function in Excel. And it seems that the formatting, the input formatting for those works the same as it does in Excel. So if you can't find, also if you can't find what you need from that, you could also go ahead and make your own formulas. I'm going to take you to an example where I created my own. So here we have a business process network object, and notice the business processes tab here, HTML content tab. Can anybody tell me what that points to? Any ideas?
Spreadsheet.
Correct, that's right. Exists to a spreadsheet.
Was that a planted question?
Yes. No, actually, that wasn't a planted question. So let me just quickly, before we go any further into this, let me just take you over to QualiWare, to QLM, and show you how the spreadsheet is set up. So right now we're looking at a business process network object. We're on the business process HTML content tab. Keep that in mind. I'm going to switch up my screen over to QualiWare. Open up the HTML publisher. And we'll go down to our template definition. So business process network. And here in the properties for the template definition, we're going to go to the center tab. And here we have all our HTML content tabs. So the one we're interested in is the business process properties. And so I've opened that up. And as you can see here, embedded into that is a spreadsheet object called business process properties. And if we go into that spreadsheet object, we can find that it's linked to a generic query, as I had mentioned before. And if you go into the generic query, you'll see that you'll see how it's built, and you see what the sort of scope of the spreadsheet is in this concerns field here. So if I were to visit the spreadsheet without it being embedded, so if I were to visit the spreadsheet template definition on the web, it would show me it would show me the business processes for Chixie car rental processes. But if I have it in an HTML content tab for the relevant template, then this concerns field will be changed dynamically according to what you're looking at. So that's what's going on here on the web. Let me just switch back to the web. Whoops, wrong one.
Someone has their hand up.
Oh.
Is it okay if we ask questions as we go
Absolutely.
along, or do you want us to wait?
Go right ahead.
Somebody has their hand up. JR.
What can I do for you?
Maybe not?
No, that was an old hand. I'm sorry.
Old hand? Okay, no problem. Great.
I'll take it.
All right.
All right, thanks.
All right, so going back to the web, here are some examples of some custom formulas. So these ones here in the sort of gray outlined area are out of the box examples. So what it's doing is it's pulling, so you see it has two spreadsheet tabs here. It's pulling the information from the first tab, which is built on the generic query, and manipulating it. So one example is the number of processes. And as you can see here, you're using the count A, which is also a function in Excel. And it's referencing the attribute name within the generic query. So you have the option of using that as well. Or you could reference, as it's shown here, you could reference columns or cells in in the other tab. So this one multiplies the number of columns by the number of rows and gives you 55, which is the total number of cells there that you could fill in with information. And then this one counts the amount of blank cells and gives you a percentage of completion. So that's the out of the box sort of functions. Here's some extra stuff that I've added. So one from my earlier example, where I wanted to find the number of unique owners. So it's using count unique. And these two are using the same formula to find the number of information systems and capabilities used. Now for the IT systems helping deliver capabilities section here, I wanted to show what IT systems are used in this BPN and what capabilities they help fulfill. So this was built from a composite of various formulas located adjacent to the dynamic field in the main spreadsheet tab. And I'm going to tell you in a second why this is actually not best practice in context of spreadsheets that are embedded in HTML content tabs, because as you're navigating as you're looking at different business process networks, for instance, that have this business process spreadsheet, these rows naturally will change based on the contained objects within that diagram. And what that results in is if you're including some custom stuff here, so now I'm outside the dynamic area, I'm in the static area, which is below and beside the dynamic area. When that information changes as you're switching a spreadsheet, or as you're switching a business process network, for instance, you may end up losing some of these fields, and then whatever functionality you've built into here won't do that. It won't. Well, you may experience some data loss. So as I'd mentioned, that this field right here is a composite of various functions. So it says what IT systems deliver which capabilities. Of course, taking into consideration the fact that the spreadsheet actually has a couple of information systems that are responsible for delivering, or sorry, the same information system that's responsible for delivering multiple capabilities. So I wanted to take that into account. So I wanted to find the amount of instances of a specific information system. I gave it a label so that I could then order it. I identified the unique ones, and then I just replaced the deliver capability field here because we're going to be using a VLOOKUP. I've also indexed these so that, see here where there's a blank field because the Chixie beacon was already mentioned or accounted for in this row. This index will ensure that they come out here with no blanks so that we can easily refer to them in the tab here. But for future reference, if you're ever planning to play with the information in a spreadsheet that's using a generic query and that spreadsheet is tied to an HTML content tab, likely the content on the spreadsheet itself will change. And so be very careful where you're placing your your formulaic compositions. I would, as a best practice, I would just include it in another tab here. So I would just reference something in this tab, for instance. Right. So by the way, since we're talking about capabilities, there are also other ways to see what delivers these in context of spreadsheets. If you look at, for instance, a business capability model object, it has a tab with spreadsheets. So let's go check that out. So here's a business capability object, and delivered by tab contains actually not one but 4 individual spreadsheets. And the way that this is structured in QLM versus what I had shown you earlier is simply that there's another layer of HTML content tab. So there's an HTML content tab called delivered by, and then there's 4 subsequent embedded HTML content tabs that then contain the spreadsheets that then refer to the generic queries. So here we can see so these spreadsheets show the relationships between capability and whatever applications, processes, initiatives, or information systems would deliver these. So this is another kind of this is similar to a link matrix in QLM, where I can define the relationship. If I feel that manage asset, if I feel that general ground handling is fulfilling the manage assets capability, or vice versa, I can simply check this off and save my spreadsheet. Right. So what else here? So we've seen a few different uses for spreadsheets so far. Here's another big one, bringing information into QualiWare. And we're going to do this using CSVs. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a brand new spreadsheet. And call this demo. Okay. So I'm going to OK on this. And then I'm going to navigate to my spreadsheet. Here we are. So from the spreadsheet, we will import a CSV. And the way we do this is we access the data contextual tab. And the last button here called load file content into spreadsheet, we can upload CSVs with information. So let's do that right now. So I'm going to import some dummy data. And here in the dummy data, we have our business process or activity name in this case, because well, you'll see it in a second what diagrams we're working with. The description for the activity, the owner of that activity, and some irrelevant information here in case you're concerned about having some data that you don't know what to do with. That's fine as well. So now that I've got my dummy sort of data in here, we can see that we have now three, not one, but three spreadsheet tabs. The first one contains the content, and I actually going to refresh this. Seems to have bugged out on me. So the first tab contains the content that I uploaded using the CSV. The second tab is pertains to mapping rules for those fields. So we're going to be defining what goes into which template, into what attribute, are there any linkages, stuff like that. And then the last tab is for is concerning the diagram this is going to go into, because you're not just importing the data. This is meant for importing data into a diagram. So we're going to be using a business process diagram, which uses activities. And so let's do some mapping here. So for the BP, for the activity name, I'm going to say reuse object, because if I have multiple entries for an activity, for the same activity with the same name, and I don't want that to be created redundantly within the repository, I have to use this. I have to use this option, reuse object. So we're going to map this to an activity, and this is going to be the name. Formatting's fine. Show on diagram, yes. And action. Here in the actions, this is very important. So here's where we designate what is a primary item, or what would be sort of the thing to link anything else to within the diagram, and that would appear front and center on the diagram. So I'd select this create as primary item. For the description, we don't need to specify the template again. We just go for short description. Show on diagram, yes. And here in the action, we are going to set that as a attribute value for the primary item. So this is why we don't need the template to be specified again here. And now for the owner, again, we're going to do reuse object, because if I go back into my content tab here, let me just, there you go. So if I go back into my content tab, we can see that the owner, there are just 3 owners that are being that are responsible for these sort of 10 activities. So again, we're going to reuse the object. We're going to map this to a position. And before I go map to attribute, we need to look at the actions, because if it's a secondary item, this map to attribute will be the attribute that is connecting it to the activity. So if I say create as a secondary item and link from the primary item, now it's going to consider this is the primary object and this is a secondary object. So the map to attribute, in this case, will have to be something like has responsible or owned by, something like that, right? That links, that there's either a forward or a backward relation field. And of course, the irrelevant information we do nothing with. Go into our options, make sure we're outputting these objects to the right diagram type. Everything's fine. So Then I'm going to go into the data tab and output these objects to, or convert to a model, as the button says here. Okay, it's telling me to save first. So there we go. Now that we've saved, we can map these objects to a model. And now it's building that diagram.
It'd be nice if I could borrow you for a few days. It's a very complicated.
That can be arranged, Carol.
Right.
Just
I
give me a
know it.
call.
It's just I'm so poor these days.
Carol, we also do financing, just so you know.
Oh my goodness. Like, it's just I've been trying to like we basically deal with many stakeholder models on our projects. Like sometimes we have 50 people involved. And I said to myself, it would be nice to create a diagram in QualiWare that would show us our internal stakeholders, external ones, all the different domain stakeholders. So I thought, you know, maybe I should just create myself a CSV file with all the roles and the teams, the actors, and then use a generic table interface and bring that over to QualiWare. But I think, because I wasn't sure if a stakeholder model is available to draw onto the web. So this is where I'm at right now, is I'm trying to get something that I can create an automatic diagram that shows me the stakeholder model that I deal with each of our projects. So I know generic table interface is old school, but it's very powerful and it works pretty good, I think. Would you suggest that I use a spreadsheet instead in the web, the way you just showed, or?
As long as the object, so as long as you're using objects that are directly available to use in so you know when you're in QLM you have your symbols panel on the right. As long as you're referencing objects that are directly pertinent to the diagram that you're trying to populate with objects from a CSV, then it's totally fine. And as long as it's within a context of populating a diagram.
Yeah, and the other thing is a lot of this information comes from a business case. And these documents are Word, they're like 100 pages long. And what we do is we bring this 100-page long document into a diagram in QualiWare. We're using the layered viewpoint with RK-made symbols.
Right.
But I would have liked to be able to bring in a lot of that info automatically, you know, I was thinking using the generic table interface. Right. Because I don't think the layered viewpoint is going to be available on the web. We did some customization to it, and I don't think it's going to work. So that's why I'm looking at the generic table interface. But,
Kevin is actually replying because I think his audio is not working again. He says you can do this in QLM. He said you can do this in QLM with a GTI as well.
Correct, and then you don't need a diagram.
Exactly. And then what, sorry?
And then you don't need a diagram to map those objects, so you can just import the objects. But yeah, like you said, it is a little more old school. It seems that it seems that we bugged out here, and it's not it's refusing to build the diagram. But that's okay. The objects themselves should actually be in the repository. If I were to maybe I guess I'll have to force close this because it's not going back either. Okay, 1 second.
I saw that in 10.4.2 as well. I was kind of hoping you'd not see this in 10.5.
No.
And of course,
we're gonna have to go to 10.6.
Oh no. Okay. Well, it seems that now it's going through a very long login process. This might take a few minutes. I don't know if you guys want to stick around for that, just to see the objects in the repository, but okay, there you go.
Kevin is commiserating. He says, don't you love demos?
Yes.
Nevertheless, this is a very strong feature. This is the GTI 2.0, basically. It's going to upload the information, and it's going to also build a diagram for you. I usually recommend using that. Actually open the GTI, know what kind of attributes you want to load with what kind of properties and etc., and then copy and paste it into the Excel sheet. Because what Dragos showed you, as far as mapping the attributes, there's only a couple of them available by default with hints and some sort of a help as far as the QualiWare Excel sheet goes, spreadsheet goes, and then for the rest you gotta input it manually. So having the GTI opened, you can copy and paste the information easily. So that would be my recommendation.
There you go. So as you guys can see there, we do have the dummy activity objects imported, and they are linked to the owner, and the description is populated as it showed in the CSV. We also have these these extra 4, 5, 6, and 7. Those are from earlier experiments of mine. Disregard those, but yes. So the objects are in there. It's just the diagram itself. So we used a.
Phil, you had your hand up. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, I guess I think that would be nice if we could do it, but for a non-diagram object, right? I mean, you might have a bunch of business rule or a bunch of, I don't know, category. That's a good example that you would want to import without necessarily wanting to have them on the diagram. So does that mean that you cannot import objects that don't belong to a diagram? Or is there a way to do it anyways?
I'm not sure I understand what you mean.
So I would say do the import and then delete the diagram afterwards.
Yeah, but yeah, sure, I guess.
Yeah, I see what you mean, Phil. There are some non-graphical templates and properties, right? So you want to just upload them. Yeah, I haven't tried it. I don't know, Dragos, you have tried uploading any non-graphical templates into the spreadsheet.
I tried with a person object, and it didn't. It created the person object, but it didn't create the linkages. So that points to what I was saying earlier, that you need to have stuff that's directly relevant to that diagram in there. Otherwise, it's hit and miss. Like the position objects that I'd created, they're not actually a symbol that's available in the diagram, although you can link objects in the diagram to position objects. So that one worked for me, but person objects for some reason did not.
And the other thing I wanted to say is you showed your generic query and you had a diagram in the concern field. The way I see the concern field is more for your testing purposes. If you want to see what the generic query would output in terms of data, then you put an object there, then it will grab the information in the diagram. Because if you looked at your query, you had a filter that looked at the object ID, and it will the last line, where this object ID equals QNM ID. That's where it goes. It grabs the object that the focus is on. So when you were on your business process diagram, that's the object ID that it's looking at. So when you change tab to go to your spreadsheet, it's taking that diagram object ID to do the query instead of taking that concern object. So if you switch that business process, it will still give you the proper business process versus what's in that field. So this is really for preview the query, and it's also very useful when you do reports. If you want to preview your reports within QLM, if you have nothing there, then that you probably won't preview your report correctly. I do have one question regarding the spreadsheet though.
Yep.
Is you might have a query like this one that will output one line and then it's the object name and one object that's in the multi-link field with its link value. Then another line is that same object with the second object in the multi-link field with the other link value. I don't know if you're following me. So it's
So
one line.
you're setting up multiple, like you're saying related to this object, which is related to such and such attribute.
No, it's when you have an activity, you have the resource multi-link field, and you can put attributes in the link field.
Yep.
Right. So if you want to extract that information about those link value, you need to do a generic query, and in that generic query, you'll be able to extract those value, and then it's going to be one line for each of the item in your multi-link field. When you view that in a spreadsheet,
yeah,
the end result is you have it's as if it merged the cell on the first one, the name. So you have one activity with span over 3 or 4 or whatever number of resource, and then the link value. So my question is it possible to have it not to merge the first cell?
No.
It merged similar content together.
Yeah,
and if you want to extract that into Excel and then import it into a database afterward or something on another system, whatever, then you have to replicate those merged cells so that it's readable on the other side.
Yeah, I personally haven't experimented that far, so I don't know whether that, how we could get it to behave to split those cells. Yeah, I don't know. Anybody has any input?
And I know I said last question, but I got another one. Though in that spreadsheet, you showed that you can have a drop down with the list of value that is available to choose from. I'm not talking about the governance stuff, but other choice field, let's say, or with choice or whatever. In QLM, you can set up so that the choice that you are presented with are based on value of something else.
Based on values in the filter, in the query filter tab, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Well, I mean, you can have QCL code that will give you a list of value.
Right.
Or you could have, if you have a single link field that link to a person object, you can have it so that only person object starting with a P will show up as a choice. So can you add those filter like on your originated by field or responsible in QLM? You can say, well, you know what?
Well,
on that type of object,
yeah,
you add a filter on this one, so it shows you only people's name starting with a D.
Yeah, so that so I think I know what you're talking about. That is for now just configurable within QLM. There's not much for the data validation, especially for multi-link stuff and single link.
So do we still have someone from QualiWare? Hope they're taking notes. It's recorded, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, it's certainly something that we can look into.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's probably. I'm not sure if the QualiWare folks are on. If it's well after 11 o'clock there now. So anyway, okay.
Yeah.
We can take that up. We can take that offline, Phil, and investigate it.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Anything else, Dragos?
No, that was it. That's all I had. So in summary, we went over spreadsheets at a high level. We saw spreadsheets powered by generic queries. We updated repository objects from spreadsheet dynamic content. We made static content with formulas. We saw spreadsheets in action inside the template definition tabs and how those are set up. And we also imported some content into QualiWare using spreadsheets. That's all I had.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Okay, thanks everyone. We've come to the end of our meeting. It's 5:20. Thanks for everybody sticking with us. Any last questions or comments about anything before we wrap things up? Okay, either everybody's decided that they're tired and they're ready to be finished now.
Thank you for the meeting.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming. Everyone, our next user group meeting for May will be almost right at the very end of the month. So it'll be Monday, May 30th. We look forward to seeing you. And if anybody has any suggestions of content you would like to see, topics you would like to discuss at the user group meeting, you all know how to get in touch with me. And I would appreciate hearing from you.
Can you hear me, Cecile?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks all. See ya.
Okay. All right. I have a quick question for you. We logged a ticket about 6-7 months ago, and it had to be escalated to QualiWare, and we haven't heard of it yet. So is there a way that we can maybe have those tickets addressed?
If you can get in touch with me with the ticket number tomorrow.
Okay.
Carol,
Yeah,
we'll
I'll
talk
do
about it.
that.
Thank
Sounds
you.
like a plan. Thank you so much. Have a great
All right.
evening, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye now. Take care.